Oh, hello there. Yes, well, that turned out windy, didn't it? Yes. Definitely got the wind up one way or another. Yes. Anyway, there was an awful lot of hot and cold air blowing around yesterday, mainly in and around the awful terrorist atrocity by them Muslims in Southport. Except, well, it wasn't, was it? We did have the unedifying spectacle of all of those free-thinking individuals on the right in terms of the commentariat who always come up with a measured opinion and don't follow other people, trying desperately to outrage each other. So Julia Hartley Brewer felt that she really had to be more outraged than Carol Malone, who certainly wasn't going to be outdone by Darren Grimes, and he wasn't going to let Lee Anderson be more outraged than he was. And of course, in amongst all of this, anything that might be considered true, of course, goes out of the window. Because a bit like Donald Trump pardoning the J6 rioters, having established that inevitably it must be a government cover-up because of their terrorism, it must be, we can't quite actually make that one stick. So therefore we'll have to slightly change tack. But at the same time, if we just shout a lot, you might not notice that the basic facts of the thing have changed. So well, we'll come on to that anyway with the YouGov poll. So consequently, we have this ongoing narrative which is now trying to squirm its way around the fact that something that patently wasn't a terrorist attack means that we now need to change the definition of terrorism. And the fact that it wasn't by a Muslim means that it's to do with brown people still that were born here, even if they were born in Wales, and even if we don't actually know what their motivation is, other than they do appear to be what might, in in Chris Rock's words on school shooters in the States, whatever happened to just plain nuts. Yeah, an individual. But in all this noise, you see, the beauty of it is that the basic narrative of, them Southport riots were just concerned citizens who were reacting to the immigrants bringing their crime to us, that manages to stay thankfully intact. And all of those people that very much amplified all of that stuff, a la Melanie Phillips is a sort of template model, can just carry on. But the thing that I find intriguing about all of this, of course, is the other big kind of horrific murdering with knives and sexual assault and God knows what else story, which is the crossbow killer. Yeah, when we've got Kyle Clifford, who it's been an ongoing story, this one, so you would have thought it would really run because it involves all of those horrific elements and somebody using knives on people in a really nasty way. But it just hasn't gained any traction at all, even though the ramifications of it, potentially with the guy being an ex-squaddie and potentially having PTSD, or indeed with what appears to be a history of violent assault in the family, we just will ignore that because unfortunately we can't make any political capital out of it whatsoever. So it becomes a non-thing, which neatly brings us to the YouGov poll, which was released yesterday, which makes quite intriguing reading. Link down below, inevitably, about exactly what it is that people believe. And all of that stuff, all of that noise that got stuck early on, for a lot of people it has stuck, and oddly enough, the people it's stuck most with is Reform voters. And you might say, well, okay, maybe Reform voters are magically better informed than the rest of us, and they fully understand that there's a huge government cover-up. We can tell it's a government cover-up because there's no evidence. Do you see the way that works? Yeah, they might well be somehow have their finger on the pulse in the same way that, flat earthers do, because even though there's all that evidence around that there isn't a flat earth, it's obviously a government conspiracy. How do we know? Well, there's so much of it, isn't there? Yes. But all of these people, why would it be that Reform voters will believe that? Well, because they are far more likely to take on board the types of grifterdom, commentariat style news that is going to report it that way. So they are the primary audience of, for example, now the Daily Telegraph, GB News and Talk TV, where this stuff is just wall to wall. So they're far more likely to do it. But the problem that they don't understand, of course, is that This is actually a government plot. The government is doing this deliberately to spot who are the conspiracy nuts out there and taking names. And of course, earning a fortune because you're going to pay 25 quid into reform to do it. Why do you think it's a public limited company? Nigel Farage is just a front man for all this stuff. But of course, if you don't believe all of this stuff and are trying to move a debate on in and around what we do with people with mental health issues in the UK, oh, well, he was referred to all of those agencies and they didn't do anything. No, because they refer things up the line and then somebody somewhere has to make a decision about to action things. Except, of course, those decision-making processes in terms of actioning things need somebody to have the ability and resources to action them, which these days haven't existed since, well, gosh, strangely enough, about 2010. Speaking as somebody that deals with autistic young people, I'm very often in contact with young people who have interesting right-wing views, shall we say, and they tend to be right-wing because they tend to be, white, and that's where those people tend to go. Now, loads of people that I've worked with in the past 20 years have given me very much pause for thought of exactly how much and what I write about them, and sometimes, if I'm particularly concerned, I will write a great deal about them. But there's no good me suggesting that somebody is teetering on the edge of some serious mental health issues if there's a 4-year waiting list to see somebody in CAMH. Yes, sorry, that's mental health services for children, because those things basically don't exist at all. So I can flag things up as much as I might want to, but nothing will happen. Why? Because exactly the same people that are very concerned that nothing's being done are the people that are voting for nothing to be done. That's your reform voters, and you will get a lot more of it if we get that style of government, yeah? It will be very, 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 very dreadful that people like me magically aren't curing the ills of a very, very nasty and rapacious economic and social system. Still, the good news there is it's definitely my fault. But you do want to take on board that thing about, the government and reform and keeping lists of names. It's really serious. It's real. That's the real conspiracy.